Rick, that was phenomenal having Janetta on.
Yeah, Janetta Coleman with Genesis Mediation of Indiana. She's a president. She's extremely interesting. And, she talked about, to me, she was talking about the explaining family mediation, which I think a lot of people don't really understand. And there's a lot of intricacies to it. And I thought that was very interesting. What did you find most interesting?
Well, I come from a divorced family. So the way to talk, the way to break up, how you do holidays and all that stuff, and even like passing of parents, and how like we had to get rid of our grandparent stuff and who does what. And it's so complex, and it's nice the way she broke it down.
Yeah, she's a social worker, so her you can feel her caring and compassion for people. The other thing I thought was really interesting is that she wrote a book, and the book, I have it right here, it's called Surviving Foster Care, and it's the way she did it so that a child can use it to actually plan out their life. What a brilliant way to put something together.
Yeah. So people need to tune in for this one.
I would tune in. She's phenomenal.
Yep.
Welcome to Indy's Real Estate Gurus, your ultimate guide to the dynamic world of real estate in Indiana. And I'm Rick Ripma, your hardworking mortgage guy, and I've been in real estate and mortgages for over 24 years.
And I'm Ian Arnold, a loan officer on Rick's hardworking mortgage team, and we are both with Advisors Mortgage Group. Together, we'll empower you with expert advice, market trends, and successful stories from guru realtors and local experts.
Whether you're a homeowner, investor, or pro, join us as we navigate the thriving Indy real estate market.
Now get ready to unlock the doors of success, one episode at a time.
Well, today we are really excited. We have Janetta Coleman, and Janetta is a mediation specialist.
Yes.
Correct?
That is correct.
And what type of mediation all do you do?
So I do family mediation, statewide. So anyone who's going through a divorce or separation or has parenting issues post-divorce, we can assist. We also do parent coordination, and I also do elder mediation.
And what is elder mediation?
Now, elder mediation is a segment where if individuals are having issues coming to decisions about what they're going to do for mom or dad, or for their sibling. Sometimes that can be, a medical issue, or should we have them move to this state with this sibling, or should we put them into assisted living? What do we do with the house? All those kinds of things. It's a little bit different from divorce mediation because it involves however many people is involved in the process, and it can go across state lines because we have siblings in one place and one in another, and you get into more of that medically and end of life issues. So it's something that takes a lot of time, and you need a very sensitive hand to move through that.
You do, and you need somebody who understands it.
Yes.
Because my dad passed, and my mom passed a few years later, and there's 6 kids, and we're all living in different states.
Yes.
And it's a difficult process when they're going through their last year or two of life. It's a tough thing, and you get very emotional. Your whole family gets very emotional, and everybody reacts differently.
Yes, they do.
So
they do.
I think it's important to have somebody who can actually walk you through it. And I know it's really impressive to me the different things that are available now to people going through that situation.
Yes.
Like we had somebody on, and they help people sell their home, but they do
They do
auctions.
Yeah, like an estate sale on their behalf, which contributes to, their next phase of living, if that's going to be assisted living. So yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that was available. And that's such a beautiful thing. I mean, because it's hard to do yourself.
It is hard to do. And if there's a lot of emotion involved in that, and there's going to be, because if you're packing up mom or dad, which I had to do, and they've been somewhere for 50 years and they're resisting letting go of something. But as, their child, you're like, but no one's using this. You haven't used this in so many years. It's not about that. It's about, they accomplished. This is something that they purchased. It has memories. So when you see people not wanting to give up their possessions, it's not because they don't understand that it's maybe not useful, but it's part of the memories.
Yes.
And they don't want to let go of that because it means something to them.
It's very sad to me because when you go through that, what was so important to them nobody wants.
Yes.
It's really hard.
It is. And sometimes you have to say, you know what, decide as a sibling group, go ahead and, assume a few things. Just do that. You can do whatever you want to after they've, passed on, but to give them comfort in that moment, because you have to remember they're giving up so much. They're giving up their comfort, where they are, their community, maybe their church, maybe even, the city that they lived in. So, allow them to have some things that follow them for comfort, and to know that you have something, because they may have kept something for a long time, knowing that they wanted to pass this on to you.
Oh, yeah, they did.
And
they
that meant something to them, and they worked hard for it.
Yes.
And so, for that moment to satisfy their need, sometimes you have to kind of take one for the team, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think, as long as everybody gets along, it works out pretty well. My family all got along, but it worked out. You got to do that. Yeah. And you care about that person. So you do pretty much whatever you have to do. Because the reality is, like, they weren't ever coming back. We could tell them we could tell my mom pretty much anything we wanted. She didn't remember the next minute. So just make her comfortable. And
exactly.
And most of the stuff, the little stuff you kept, but it was the furniture, that type of thing. Everybody has that. So it's tough.
Right.
But let's go back. Let's get on the divorce mediation, because I'm a lot more familiar with that.
You are.
Hold on, not personally. Hold on. Before his wife starts asking questions.
Not personally.
Do you have something you want to tell her?
No, we've been married 38 years, 39, almost 40 years.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So
wonderful.
No, we're not doing any of that, but I do a lot of financing for divorce.
Yes.
And there's a lot, it's different than, most people don't realize it's different than it is for, your normal financing. There's different things to consider. And you, in the mediation, have to consider much, much more than I have to consider.
We do. We do. There are 3 specific areas we have to look at. First and foremost is going to be, if there are children involved, a parenting plan. For divorce in Indiana, there has to be a parenting plan created to satisfy the court. That's going to work for the children and for the individual co-parents now. The next piece that has to be looked at is assets. So if there's a division of assets, or there's a home that we need to sell, of course, this is where you're going to come in. And if they're amicable about it, they can come to some terms about it. And that can include 401ks or retirements, whatever it is that they have. And then the third piece is child support. Child support has to be a part of the divorce process if someone is getting divorced in Indiana.
Yep. Yeah. So let me ask you this.
Yes.
What made you even choose to do this? This is like, you're talking to people during their hardest times, where there's parents or divorce. That has to be emotional toll. So what made you even decide to do this?
Well, by profession, I am actually a licensed social worker. So in the state of Indiana, if you have a post-secondary degree, but social workers tend to be a professional field that lends itself to it, because we understand family dynamics when families are going through difficult moments or transitions, or that they break apart, for instance, because there is foster care or termination of parental rights. We understand the breaking apart of families, but also the attempts of coming back together of families as well. And so the skill set that you have lends itself well to that. A lot of times people believe that just attorneys are mediators, and there are many out there, and great ones who understand family dynamics as well. But as a social worker, I saw this as another realm of helping families, because I was watching some families go through this process, and I was like, wow, this is difficult. This is different. And I just happened to see that there was a training for divorce mediation, domestic mediation. And I went through that training, and all attorneys and social workers and anyone else from other professions can go through that same training to become a domestic mediator.
I think, this is just my opinion, but I do think that the people that I know who are social workers or have been social workers have a different level of caring about people than somebody like me. And I think that is part of what sets you apart, because you care enough. When you care so deeply about others, which, I hate to say, I just don't feel like I'm at that level. I'd like to be, but I think it matters. And I think it makes a huge difference for that person. Would you agree?
I really do agree, because you're looking at people, they're coming to you in the worst moment of their life. There is something happening in their family that's breaking apart and they did not expect to be there. And it may not even be the best version of themselves. And you have to have great care with that, because who they are in that process isn't necessarily a total depiction of that individual. And so you have to be able to manage the emotions along with the decisions that have to be made. Now, there are two ways in which mediation happens. There is kind of what we call the shuttle method, which means that individuals are in separate rooms with their attorneys if they're represented, but you don't have to be represented to do mediation. But the mediator goes in between each room, taking information back, agreements back, and going back and forth. I don't tend to practice mediation in that way. I have. However, to me, the best case scenario is when you can have both individuals in the room as a collaborative piece, because they have to be co-parents moving forward. So there has to be some sense of ability to coexist, if you will. And even when you have them together, that's where it gets more impactful. It doesn't mean that someone doesn't get upset and is like, I don't want to do that. Those things happen, and you have to know how to manage that. And for me as a social worker, the heightenedness of emotions is normal to me, because everything about social work, and I worked in child welfare for 25 years, that is normal, unfortunately. It's normal. It doesn't, faze me in any way or scare me, versus someone who may not have worked in the realm that I have. This feels a little bit different, and they may want to lean towards the shuttle method, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. There are some instances where you may want to have that, and some instances you may not. So for instance, if there was a domestic violence situation or intimate partner violence, shuttle method might be the best route in that instance. So there are some reasons why, and you have to think that through as a mediator, what's going to be the best case scenario for the two individuals that you're working with.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and there's a lot of emotion, and like you said, not everybody is themselves during a time like that when there's that much emotion.
No, they're not. They are really in the middle of the grief cycle. You've got anger, you've got denial, you have acceptance, you have all these different cycles, and people can bounce around these 6 different phases of the cycle. And so, at first you just may be stunned. One party knew that this is what was going to happen. The other party didn't know, and it sprung on them, at least from their perspective. And so this can be a very unnerving moment. You have so many decisions that you need to make. You're still parenting. Imagine going through this and you're still under the same household with this individual, your co-parent, and yet trying to shield your children from the emotional up and down that happens, because it is completely a roller coaster for parents as they're going through this process. Well,
I haven't gotten to, so I'm going to go back a little bit and find out more about you. Where did you grow up? Give us your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, what your life was like before social work and all of this.
I am a Hoosier through and through.
Okay.
I was born in Anderson, Indiana. And so I love Anderson. That's the place of basketball. I went to the original Anderson High School. I say that because our original Anderson High School is not being used now, and so we're all sensitive about that.
Oh, okay.
If you're from Anderson, you understand. But yeah, and so my parents, my mother is actually a social worker as well.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And my father's an educator, and so he retired being a principal and teacher, and history was his subject of area with middle schoolers and high schoolers.
Wow.
So I come from a line of educators and those who are in a helping profession. And so growing up, my parents were foster parents. So now you know why,
yes.
Social services kind of lended itself to me. My parents were kind of those informal foster parents, way back in the day when, like, if you had a troubled cousin, they would send them to the uncle's house.
Yes.
We were that house people were sent to. But then they decided to formalize that. And I think that's because my father early on was working at the juvenile center before he chose his career. And so he worked at a juvenile center in Anderson.
Okay.
And so he, a probation officer, and just, being around kids who are in the system, if you will. And so from that, it kind of spawned them being foster parents. So all of my formative years, I remember children being in and out of our home. That's all that I know. I am their biological child, and I have 2 other siblings, but there's many others whom we call our siblings as well.
So when you went, I'm going to go back to Anderson.
That's
so is the high school the one that had the wigwam?
Yes, right.
Okay.
That's right.
The wigwam is like the most impressive gym I have
Yes, it
ever
is.
been into in my life.
Yes.
My son played there.
Oh.
And it's just unbelievable.
It is. I think it was like either the first or second largest high school gym in the state. I don't know if that title still exists, but everybody knows the wigwam. And so in high school, I was a cheerleader. So I was always, there at the wigwam and cheerleading. And Coach Norm Held, he was there, and, several other coaches. He's passed on now. But yeah, it's that whole basketball and the wigwam, it's in your blood if you're from Anderson.
Yeah, I would think so. Because the wigwam, I remember walking in there the first time. It's like,
It's
oh
massive.
my, this is unbelievable.
It's
massive, but have you ever been there?
I have not.
It's the classic Indiana 50s, 60s basketball.
Yes, it was.
It is. You go in there and you feel like, wow, I'm back.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm surprised they didn't use that. Well, they probably did in the Hoosiers or whatever that.
The movie Hoosiers, possibly. Yeah. I mean, if you watch that movie, and if you're from Indiana or Anderson, that movie will speak to you.
Yes.
It truly will.
Well, I'm from Indiana also.
Okay.
Born and raised in Marion County. So
All right.
same way. Now he's a Florida guy.
Yeah. Well, we won't hold it against you.
Hey,
No.
I was actually born here, but then raised in Florida, then moved back. So
Okay,
I'm
we'll
all over
let
the
you.
place.
We'll let you stay a Hoosier. We'll let you stay a Hoosier.
Yes, officially he's a Hoosier.
Yes. All right. So if somebody's listening to this and they have questions
Yes.
about, all right, maybe they're possibly going through a divorce, or even family member needs to downsize and they have to go through all that process or whatever, how would they get in touch with you to figure out their next steps?
Well, we offer a free consultation. So I would say the best way to contact us is on our website, which is GEN Mediation, GEN Mediation, all one word.com. And you can just schedule a consultation online. It'll automatically shoot it to me, look at my schedule available, and give you some dates. And I can do those consultations either by phone or we can have a virtual Zoom call as well to just kind of talk about what your situation is, what's going on, and what the process entails.
Yep. And what was the website one more time?
It's www.genmediation.com.
And to get a hold of Ian or I, if you have any mortgage questions or needs, go to hardworkingmortgageguys.com. That's hardworkingmortgageguys.com, or you can give us a call at 317-672-1938. It's 317-672-1938.
All right. So we're going to take a little pause from the work part. Well, let's get to know you a little bit more.
Sure.
So when you're not working and you need a little stress relief, what do we catch you doing for fun?
I don't know. You know what? I am a mom of 2. So I have a 8-year-old and a soon-to-be 14-year-old who thinks she's going to be 17. And so they keep us busy. They have a lot of activities that they're involved in, karate, plays, choir. So I'm quite busy. But otherwise, sometimes you'll just see me, especially in the fall and winter, which is my favorite season, sitting by my fireplace, either listening to jazz or taking some time with my girlfriends, or watching something just crazy, mind-boggling on TV like Love It or List It.
Something you really have to think about.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it. I want some happy stuff. And that's because, the work that I do can be very emotionally taxing. So I try to keep things light for myself. I host family events all the time. And so just hosted, Thanksgiving with my family. So, I try to stay mindful of staying happy and doing stuff for me.
So I have to ask, since you're a fan of jazz, so you've been one of my wife's and I favorite restaurant was Jazz Kitchen. We haven't been there since COVID, but we love that place.
It's a wonderful place. I love it. I do go there. I enjoy it immensely. Sometimes I'll go to like a jazz fest. Like I went to the jazz fest in Louisville, Kentucky, which was really awesome. And it was even more awesome because my husband decided that we would take a road trip there on his motorcycle. So he rides. And so I do not ride the motorcycle. I'm a passenger. I do not need that responsibility. My mind is like everywhere. And so we went to the Jazz Fest in Louisville, Kentucky. So if you ever get a chance, awesome. Wonderful time.
We'll have to do that.
Yeah.
All right, I got to know what type of motorcycle does he have?
He has a cruiser. Okay. So he used to have a ZX14, which was a sports bike. So that's what I call the speed demon. But he has a cruiser, so it's much more relaxed. I've got my, heated seats and my 2 armrests. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's not like riding on a bike hardly at all.
No, not at all. Very smooth, very quiet.
Yeah. I have friends who I've never had a bike, but I have friends who do bikes, and it's amazing the differences. One of them has a sports bike and a touring bike.
A lot of people do.
Yeah,
a lot of people do.
And how different those are for how you ride. And now me, I'd have to have a touring bike because if I had a sports bike, I'd go out and I'd kill myself on it.
Hence Speed Demon.
There's nothing I don't know of much that's more fun to me than the acceleration of a vehicle. I
can understand that. I mean, I get it. I understand. I've been on the back of his bike when he's had one of his Speed Demon moments. It's fun and scary at the same time. Yeah. But he decided it's time. And plus, that's a different physical position. So you're much more, over the bike. And but with a cruiser, you're upright and, in a much more sitting position. Yeah. So the older you get, sometimes you need that.
And you don't want to leave your kids. You want to stay alive for your family. You do. So you do. And
absolutely.
You can do nothing wrong on a bike and have a problem. So it's
yes, you can.
It's tough.
So let's go through. I know briefly we talked about the process. You just go through and set up a free consultation, which is awesome.
Yes.
But are there certain steps after that? What would somebody be looking at towards doing?
Yeah. So in talking with someone, I go through the process and explain to them, this is a confidential process for individuals to enter into. It should be noted that mediation is a voluntary process. So neither party can, force either one to go into it. They have to both willingly choose to do this route, which seems to be the less conflictual route. It doesn't mean that you won't run into difficult moments in the process of your discussions, but it's less adversarial than a traditional courtroom setting, if you will. Sometimes people have to go that court route, and that happens. But if they can choose to do the least adversarial route, that's better. Because again, it allows some preservation of the relationship, which is now going to turn into a co-parenting relationship. They're reestablishing their positions as co-parents and single persons in that moment, going through the process. And what I always encourage people to do is talk to different mediators, because you want to make sure that you're comfortable with the person that you're sitting with, because you're going to be talking about things that are very personal to you, very emotional to you. And so you want to be comfortable with what's being presented to you from that, that mediator. Everybody's different. Every style is different. Just like I said, you have a collaborative setting where everyone's in the same room versus having a shuttle method. And some people do practice that, or practice both, or one or the other. And then once someone settles on that, in terms of our process, generally it will take approximately 45 days for the divorce process to conclude from beginning to end. So in the state of Indiana, there is a 60-day waiting period once someone files for divorce. So no matter if we get it done earlier, you still have to wait that 60 days. That clock has to tick down. But we do it in several sessions. So for instance, the first session, we may be talking about the parenting plan, because that's something that has to be addressed right now. They may be living in separate residences or want to live in separate residences as soon as possible, but there needs to be a parenting plan to kind of keep some continuity for their children. And so we may get that piece done. The next session may go over, the assets and division of those assets. And then, of course, there's going to be child support. So we tend to do it over 3 or 4 sessions, if you will, and there's time in between. Because what I tell people is that even though you've agreed to certain terms right now, today, with me, we're going to meet next week and I'm going to revisit what you said that you wanted to do in terms of your parenting plan. So I don't want people to feel like they are married to that right then and there, because it's something that's going to change over time as your children grow. But I also want people to enter into their agreements with full advisement. So for instance, if there's an assets piece that needs to be addressed, they need to sell the home, I'm going to send people away with homework to say, okay, you don't know the value, so talk to a realtor, talk to an advisor or a CPA about these pieces, because that's not my specialty and my role. I'm a neutral third party, so I can't weigh in on what you should do or what you shouldn't do. I will never tell someone what they should do. They can ask, what have you seen? And I'll give them a plethora of what I have seen. But if they're looking at me and they say, Janetta, should I take this deal? I can't tell you to take that deal. You know your life, you know your circumstances. You have to enter into this, not being in duress. Do the homework that you need to do, get the information that you need from your advisors or financial advisors so you can make the best decisions that you can make in that moment. I'm completely neutral in that process. And so my goal is to help them have the conversations, make sure that all the elements that need to be addressed are addressed, and then write up their agreement and submit that and file that on behalf of them to the court.
Yeah. So after, I know when you divide property stuff, that usually ends when it ends. But what about kids? So do you have consultations afterwards of like, hey, so-and-so has this person? Because let's be honest, I'm part of a divorced family. So
Okay.
I understand where it'd be like, well, this holiday is supposed to be mine and blah, blah, blah. So do you have consultations afterwards?
Yes. So what happens is that, okay, once the mediation is over and the parenting plan has been established, it is, the 2 co-parents to take that and work that out.
Yeah.
Now, they can create their own parenting plan, or they can also utilize the Indiana Parenting Time Guidelines, which is essentially kind of the state's bare minimum of how to split things up. So if they can't decide, they can look at that and use that as a guide, if you will. Then if they do not come to a resolution, they can come back to their mediator and say, we need help with this process and sitting down and thinking this through. What do we need to do? And so, yes, you can have mediation post-divorce or post-dissolution for those in the legal world. And you can, come back and talk about that, because they can, revise their agreement in terms of the parenting plan. And I often tell clients, you're going to revise the agreement because what you've established right now is based on the age and activities of what your children are doing right now. They may be, 10 and 11, but, when they're 14 and 16, you've got to talk about car and insurance and all these different things that were not in the forefront of your mind at the time of making your plan. So just know you're going to revise your plan and you're going to need to be flexible with one another.
It's got to be a very difficult time for everybody, and having somebody like you has to be extremely valuable.
Yes.
For somebody to have somebody like that. But I'm curious, I think I know, but I don't know for sure. So when do they hire you as, like, both of them hire you as you're working for both people?
Yes.
Or yes.
Yes.
It's not 2 mediators it's just one mediator.
It's one mediator.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes. So when individuals decide that they want to have mediation as their process, they are both equally responsible. So, for instance, it's assumed by ADR standards that they are going to pay for the mediator 50-50. So that one person receives 50% of their invoice and the other person receives 50% of the other invoice. And so that's how they enter into it. Unless in writing, they decide to do something different, meaning that, for instance, maybe one person was a stay-at-home parent for a long time, so they do not have income and the other co-parent is going to pay 100% of that, that's put in writing, and then they go, that particular route.
Okay. And that doesn't change your responsibility at all.
Doesn't change my responsibilities whatsoever. And so, I will file an appearance. Not all mediators do that, but I file an appearance with the court to notify the court that they are engaging in mediation. Genesis Mediation of Indiana is working with them to move through their divorce process.
And then why or what point in time would people then would contact you to get something like this started? So we're in their process. I'm probably open-ended there, but where in their process should they contact somebody? How do they decide they want mediation over normal court setup?
Yeah. Anytime in their process. Generally, when someone decides to file for dissolution, because that's the one piece that one of the parties has to do on their own. So as a mediator, and no mediator can file the petition for divorce. They have to do that themselves. Okay. Hopefully, within their court from their county, they let them know some resources. They can also go to the in.gov website to see what resources are available for divorce. Most people know, get an attorney, let's go. And that's what people know because that's what TV depicts a lot. Mediation has been around for a while, but for some people, it's still new. And unfortunately, some people may not find out about mediation until they're already in the process of dissolution. They may have gone, to court once already. And hopefully their attorney lets them know you can do mediation. And they can do it at any point. So if they decide, let's try to come together. I do have my attorney, they have their attorney, and that's not unusual either. I sometimes will have clients where one party's represented and that person is there, or both have attorneys, or neither have attorneys. You don't have to be represented to go through that process. But the caveat behind that is that if you are represented, you are responsible for your attorney's fees, in addition to your mediator's fees.
Okay. So when you're looking at somebody like on the attorneys, I've worked with a lot of divorce attorneys with their clients for financing, and I always thought that what you'd want is an attorney that's just the toughest, meanest, son of a gun, and every single one of them has told me, no, that's not what you want.
You don't.
This is something where this is a long-term, you're going to have relationships with this person, whether you're married or not, because of the kids. And the last thing you want is to have these terrible, hard feelings because of the divorce that you can't get over. Like my sister, she got divorced. Her and her ex-husband are still very good friends. Mm-hmm. They're both married to different people now. My sister said, we just weren't good married.
Yes.
And they realized that and they got divorced, but they're still very good friends because they had kids to raise, right? And the kids turned out great. So I really wanted to just point out, would you agree? You don't want that that attorney that they kind of show on TV as just being the hard nose. That's not the best one for a divorce.
It's not, because you will further destroy what's left of the fabric of their relationship. And if you destroy that, that makes co-parenting moving forward extremely different and difficult. You want your attorney to represent your best interest, yes. But you don't necessarily want them to pound on your co-parent because you have to deal with the aftermath of that with the co-parent. And if there is a lot of back and forth, and unfortunately it does happen, where people cannot get along or they are in a revengeful state where I've got to do everything, even after the divorce, because they're still upset about it. And I will say this, divorce, no matter if the person who chose it or not, there is still a loss behind that. And you have to address that for yourself. You have to address the realization that your life is different. Does that mean that maybe you should seek therapy for yourself? Possibly, so that you are the best version of yourself moving forward. When you don't take care of yourself and your needs in this process, that's where you begin to see that adversarial piece playing out over and over and over again, even after post-dissolution. And so that then can put families into the place of parent coordination, which is another arm of my services. So parent coordination is a court-appointed position by a judge to say that this individual will make decisions on behalf of this family because you all continue to come back to court over and over over again. And so usually it's post-dissolution, and that is a whole nother level. That means that I'm digging into what's going on. What are the decisions? You're still utilizing your mediation skills, but you're no longer a neutral party, if you will, because you have to weigh in on decisions at that point. And so if, a couple is in front of me and they can't decide on what the holiday schedule is going to be, I'm going to look at that, previous court order or their mediated agreement to say, this is what your schedule is. This is what you're going to do. So the parent coordinator has the ability to say, this is what's going to happen. And they'll file the recommendation with the court to say, this is what I recommend that's going to be in the best interest of the child. And so my focal point is always what's the best interest of the child, as well as the parent's relationship with the child, what's going to be the most fruitful in the decisions that have to be made. So a parent coordinator is going to be enforcing previous orders, as well as making new recommendations to decrease the level of conflict that's happening in that moment.
So this is I'm just going to do a 180 here for you. But if somebody is looking to talk to somebody about their situation, how would they get in touch with you again?
They can actually reach us on the website, which is jinmediation.com, and they can sign up for a consultation, a free consultation. So we'll do a half-hour consultation either by phone or video. They can choose to have just themselves if they're just looking for information and want to be armed with, knowledge, or if both the parties want to have that conversation together with me, we can do that too.
Well, and to get a hold of Ian or I, go to hardworkingmortgageguys.com. That's hardworkingmortgageguys.com. Or you can give us a call at 317-672-1938. That's 317-672-1938.
All right. So before we get into the question of the week, I do have a quick question. So because you are human, I'm going to ask you, is it hard to stay unbiased when you're representing two people?
Honestly, for me, it's not. And I only say that not in a boisterous way, but because I've worked with families for so long, and my role is to help them move to whatever's going to be the next step. And so that's just something that's been a fabric of my profession for over 25 years, and staying neutral. And it doesn't mean that you won't hear things that are like, oh, that's not what you want to do.
Yep.
So, I'm like, and so to kind of combat moments like that, you may say, well, let's think that through for a second. What message do you think that sends to your child? Or what message do you think that sends to your co-parent? And will this have any backlash, you think? It's always about the questions to get people to see the full circle of what they're thinking and how they're thinking. Because I had a couple here recently where, one party wanted to do something on a opposite day that wasn't their parenting time day, with their child, but wouldn't tell the other parent why they wanted to do this. And, and so the parents said, well, they don't tell me everything, so I don't tell them everything. I said, but what is it that you want? You want that person to tell you everything, right, that they're doing? And they're like, yes, I do. I said, well, sometimes you have to be what it is that you want.
Yes.
And it clicked for that person. And they're like, so I have to be willing to do it even if the other person does it. Yes. I said, why? Because that protects your peace in the process. When we do what we're supposed to do, even though the other person is not, that protects your peace. And that's the difficult. And that's something that's continuous in divorce and post-dissolution and parenting and co-parenting, is that you have to choose to do what's going to be best for your child, but also for you. You could dagger back, but what does that accomplish? Now you just keep spinning your wheels over and over, and now you'll become one of my PC clients, my parent coordination clients.
It's also a good idea for life.
It is.
For every piece of life.
It is. It really, really is. We can't move through life trying to get back at other people. A lot of times, whoever hurt you in that process can't heal you. That's going to be up to you. That's the important piece. And that's some of the tools of the toolbox of my profession that I bring to the table. So when I'm a mediator, I am not a licensed social worker. When an attorney is a mediator, they are not an attorney. We are all playing the very same role in that moment as neutral parties to those clients that are sitting in front of us.
All right. So now let's get into the question of the week. And this is going to be a fun one.
Okay.
What was your first car?
Pontiac Citation.
Ooh.
Pontiac Citation was my very first car that my dad got for me. He bought it from a college student from Anderson University, as a matter of fact. And that was my very first car. Gotta love it. I was in high school, and bless that little car's heart. That was when, you could actually put a cassette player in your, see, I'm dating myself a little bit. You put the cassette player in your car, and you could take the face off and take it with you type of deal. And I was driving to school one day, and I honked the horn, and lo and behold, the horn stuck together, and I had to drive home like all the way home. I was so embarrassed. I remember that. My dad, he worked for GM for a while, and of course he knew what to do, but it stuck together. I mean, it was an old used car, so things happen.
Sounds like you liked it though.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was a little hatchback. It was,
What color?
It was gray. It was a gray car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You probably don't know, but what size motor did it have? Do you remember?
I don't.
Probably a little 4-cylinder.
More than likely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a Citation. I'd say so.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about dating yourself, let's be honest. Rick was putting 8 tracks in his.
That's exactly that's what I was thinking. Yeah. First car I bought myself, it had an 8-track player.
Well, look, we had an RV growing up, and there was an 8-track player in that, and my father loved it, and so that's where my love of jazz, because he always has, jazz playing, and so so I know the 8 tracks. Yes, I do.
Yeah. But it's really no different than today being able to play things on your phone. We love that because it's so convenient.
It is.
Well, having an 8-track player at that time was a huge step up from a record.
Yes,
you
it
could
was.
not play in a car.
I know. Exactly.
Right?
You could not.
You couldn't do it. not if you didn't want to scratch records, right?
That's right.
Bumps would kill it. So it was a huge step up. And then when they made it cassette,
yes.
Oh my gosh, you could carry like 10 of them to one
Oh, yeah.
8-track. So that was huge.
Absolutely. What was that? You remember Columbia? I think it was Columbia Records.
Oh,
It's that you could order like 10 for a penny type deal. And of course, I did that. But yeah. And then, of course, fixing them when you had to fix them.
Put that pencil in there, turn it.
Put the pencil and turn it. That's right. That's right.
Whatever it took. Yeah, that was fun back then, though.
It was.
And, people are going back to record players. I don't think they're going back to 8-tracks, but their record players are big. And I guess the sound, I don't have a good enough ear, but somebody has a really good ear. I guess they can tell a big difference in the sound quality of a record compared to a...
You can. I actually still have a record player. I do.
Me too.
And we have a collection of LPs. My father was a big collector of that. And so I have some of them now. And I had the pleasure of showing one of my cousins who was much younger. I was like, have you ever seen an LP? They're like, what's an LP? I was like, oh, come to my basement.
Yeah.
I was like, you've never seen the Thriller album? So a lot of kids today have no idea what that is. And I played it for them like, yeah, that's the needle. You clean it with alcohol, all those things that you remember.
Yeah.
Don't jump in your house.
Don't jump in your house. The needle will jump and
That's
scratch.
Right. What about my nephew when he was like 11 or 12 for Christmas? We bought him a record player and records.
Yeah.
And it was just that he didn't have any idea what it was, but he loved it. I don't know if he still uses it, but he loved it.
It's authentic. You can hear the sounds. You hear everything before auto tunes.
Yes.
So you can almost feel where they were, the room, the sounds.
You can hear. See, I don't have that ability. It all sounds the same to me. but unless it's crackly. Yeah. Which also adds something to it.
It does add something to it.
I'm sorry. I'll quit talking about music.
That's okay,
you're
though.
right. But there is one thing she's being very modest about. She didn't even mention to us, or she didn't mention on the radio. She mentioned to us earlier. She's an author.
She is an author.
So tell me about this book.
Well, in my in my career in working in child welfare, I worked mainly with foster youth, in independent living, children who have been placed out of home and in group homes. And I used to run a group home for many years with pregnant and parenting teens. And so over the years, in that role and several different roles, I journaled a lot in working with youth. And, I would follow youth sometimes all the way from 16 to 18 because they were emancipated and aged out of the system. And so there's just a lot of lessons that you see. But of course, being, a biological child of foster parents, my historical knowledge of that is even more vast. So I could see and understand things that people wouldn't normally understand of the system. If you've never been in the system or haven't been touched by it, there's so much of it you wouldn't even think about. And so I've had a front row seat to what happens with kids in foster care. And a lot of times once they exit the system, they have to figure out who they are. And they may not necessarily have all of the support systems available to us that you and I may know, and having, traditional families that have stayed intact. And so I just decided when I left the role as a social worker, if you will. And so that was what we call, direct care, working directly with them. And so now I don't do that direct care so much, but I just felt like I wanted to leave something for young people. And it's called Surviving Foster Care, A Journey of Self-Discovery. And it's about discovering who they are. It's a workbook, it's information and lessons and plans, and it's also a journal. What is it that you want in your life? What steps can you take? It's almost like giving them the ability to create a life plan and reignite the fire that was within them. When they were much younger, they probably had dreams and thoughts about who they wanted to be. And unfortunately, going through the system, sometimes that becomes a distant dream for some, but it doesn't have to be. There's still opportunities, and you have a whole life to lead. Now that you've aged out of the system, foster care was one moment in time which seemed like eternity, but now you're 18, 19, 20, and you have all the way up until, life expectancy of 75 to create a life for yourself. And this is really something to just give them the tools and thoughts to create that life plan. And so this is something it is available on Amazon, but it's also incorporated into the reading list for the Department of Child Services of Indiana for foster parents who are fostering children too. Because it's not just for foster youth, it's also for youth who are just trying to figure out who I want to be. What do I want to do? So it's life lessons. If you have belief and you're religious, there's principles in that to give you guidance as well. But the biggest thing that I say in here is that, whoever hurt you can't heal you. That's going to be up to you. So that you can move forward positively.
Yep. I'm a big movie person. So I was watching a Medea movie.
Yes.
And one of the best lines is, forgiveness is not for them.
That's right.
It's for you.
It is.
I was like, that's actually very well said.
Yes. Yes, it is. It really is.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the letting go.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's something that I see and that goes back to the transference of knowledge and skills into, mediation. If you have not healed from the dissolution of your marriage, you're going to continue to lash out. That's where you get, mental health things can arise, but just, that adversarial and I've got to get you type deal. You have not healed. You have not addressed things that you need to address. While it may have been imposed upon you, you still have to take care of your business internally and let go. And that's hard to do for a lot of people. It's hard to see what your life is going to be when you originally thought of it with this other person. And it really is like taking a rug with a table of dishes and snatching it, but it wasn't magical. Actually, everything fell to the floor and broke. And that sometimes is that individual. And you have the duty to pick up your own pieces for yourself and for your children, so that you can move forward in a positive light.
Yeah. Well, you can't fix anything until you take responsibility for, even if it may not have been your responsibility, you still got to suck it up, take responsibility.
You do.
It's the only way you can fix it. And time passes no matter what.
No matter what.
So all that matters is what do you do in that time, right?
Yeah.
Because the time's going to pass. It's like writing up for the kids. What they don't understand, when I was young, I thought I knew everything.
Sure.
I remember arguing with my parents, and now you realize as you get old, you realize you don't really know anything.
Right.
The things you thought you knew weren't right,
Yes.
So we're all struggling through it at different ages. Some people, there's people I talked to that they were a lot smarter than me because they figured it out long before I did. But it's important. That's such an important thing to help those young kids with.
Absolutely. And the same things, and there's such parallel. The same things that youth are facing, especially foster youth who have, they don't have the family unit or support. And let's think about also co-parents who are now going through the first season of the holidays without their children. Massive. A lot of depression comes up during this season, because for foster youth, they're watching other people go to other people's homes, which is normal, for some people I'm going to my grandparents or I'm going to my cousin's house and that house and that house, they don't have that. Or you have the parent who, they normally on Christmas Eve put all the decorations up and this has been their normal. And now, the children are spending the time with the other co-parent and now they don't know what to do with themselves. And this is all new and it's to be expected. So even though the divorce is over, the emotional impact is going to come in ripples over time because of the new things that's going to have to become your new normal that was not your normal. You've got to put it together and figure out what you're going to do, stay busy, pick up some of those old hobbies that you had possibly, spend time with self, surround with some friends, do whatever you need to do, or talk it out. If you need to talk with someone, do that. Because again, the holiday season is difficult. You may have lost a parent. This is difficult. And there's just so many things that happen to people. So again, we have to be responsible for our own healing.
All right. So last time I'm going to ask, if somebody's looking they had to start a new part of their life, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of us and schedule a 30-minute consultation by visiting our website, which is genmediation.com. Schedule online, and you'll have the times available that you can select, and you will get me as the person that you want to talk to, either by phone or video.
And if you have any real estate needs or questions, please give Ian or I a call at 317-672-1938. That's 317-672-1938. Or you can go online to hardworkingmortgageguys.com. That's hardworkingmortgageguys.com. And please follow us for more Indy's Real Estate Gurus.
And a reminder, if you have any friends, family, coworkers looking to buy, sell, refinance, let us know. We're more than happy to help you. Janetta, thank you for joining us on the show. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Branch NMLS number 33041. Rick Whitman's NMLS number 664589. Ian Arnold's NMLS number is 1995469. Equal housing opportunity. Some restrictions apply.